The cafe buzzed with the usual Tuesday morning chaos, espresso machines hissing, business people hunched over laptops, the clatter of plates and murmured conversations blending into white noise. Marcus wiped down another table, his back aching from the early shift, checking his watch for the 100th time. 3 more hours until he could pick up Jaden from school. 3 more hours of forced smiles and pretending the weight of single. Parenthood wasn't crushing him, one coffee order at a time. That's when she walked in. The little girl couldn't have been more than 7, maybe 8 years old. She wore a pristine white dress with pale blue ribbons, the kind of outfit that screamed private school and trust funds. Her dark curls were pulled back with a headband that probably cost more than Marcus's entire week's wages. But it wasn't her expensive clothes that caught his attention. It was her eyes, wide, searching, and unmistakably frightened. Behind her strode a woman in a sharp business suit, phone pressed to her ear, heels clicking against the tile floor with military precision. The girl reached for the woman's hand, but the woman shifted her purse to that side, creating a barrier between them. The child's face fell, her small fingers curling into fists at her sides. Marcus had seen enough privileged families come through this cafe to recognize the pattern. Nannies dismissed mid-sentence, children treated like accessories, love measured in dollar signs rather than moments. But something about this particular scene made his chest tighten. Maybe it was the way the little girl's shoulders hunched inward, making herself smaller, invisible. He knew that posture. Jaden did the same thing when the kids at school mocked his second-hand sneakers. The woman, presumably the child's mother, snapped her fingers at the counter, not bothering to look at the barista. "Americano, black, make it quick." Her eyes never left her phone screen. The little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound emerged. She tried again, her hands beginning to move in deliberate gestures. The mother jerked her arm away, irritation flashing across her face. "Not now, Charlotte. Mommy's working." Charlotte. The name fit her, classic, elegant, probably chosen before she was born, before anyone knew she would be different. The girl's hands moved faster now, more urgently, but her mother had already turned away, pacing toward the window, while barking instructions into her phone about quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. Charlotte stood frozen in the middle of the cafe, her small frame trembling. She brought her hands to her chest, signing something Marcus couldn't quite make out, her eyes beginning to glisten with unshed tears. People walked around her like she was a piece of furniture. A businessman in a tailored suit nearly knocked into her, muttering about people blocking the walkway. A group of college students laughed loudly at the next table, their backpacks creating an obstacle course that Charlotte had to navigate. No one looked at her. No one saw her. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. He'd been invisible once, too, after his wife Sarah died, leaving him with a 4-year-old son and medical bills that could have purchased a small house. Marcus had learned what it meant to be overlooked, the pitying glances that slid away when he approached, the mothers at Jaden's school who suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be when he tried to join their conversations. The way society decided that a struggling single dad working minimum wage wasn't worth their time or attention. But Sarah had taught him something before the cancer. She taught him to see people, really see them. And right now, standing in the middle of this overpriced cafe where he served overpriced coffee to people who'd never know his name, Marcus saw Charlotte. He saw her fear, her loneliness, her desperate attempt to communicate in a world that had decided she wasn't worth the effort. Marcus set down his cleaning rag and walked toward her, his heart pounding. He'd learned basic sign language 3 years ago when Jaden's school had integrated deaf students into the regular classrooms. Sarah had always wanted him to learn. Her younger brother had been deaf, and she'd grown up signing. After she died, Marcus had enrolled in night classes, partly to honor her memory, partly because he wanted Jaden to grow up, seeing differences as something to embrace rather than ignore. He crouched down to Charlotte's eye level, making sure she could see his face clearly. Then he raised his hands and signed slowly, carefully. "Hello, are you okay?" The transformation was instantaneous. Charlotte's eyes went wide, her mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. For a moment she just stared at him, as if he'd performed some kind of miracle. Then her hands flew into motion so fast Marcus could barely keep up. "Bathroom," she signed, her small fingers urgent and precise. "I need bathroom. Mommy won't listen." I tried to tell her. Marcus glanced over at the woman still pacing by the window, oblivious to everything except her phone call. Something hot and sharp twisted in his gut. Not quite anger, but close enough. He signed back to Charlotte. "I'll help you. Follow me." He stood and gently gestured toward the hallway where the restrooms were located. Charlotte's entire face lit up with relief so profound it nearly broke him. When was the last time someone had simply listened to this child? How many times had she stood in rooms full of people, desperately trying to communicate, only to be ignored? As they walked toward the hallway, Marcus noticed Charlotte's mother finally look up from her phone. Her eyes narrowed when she saw her daughter walking away with a stranger, a man in a café uniform with worn shoes and tired eyes. "Excuse me." She stormed over, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What do you think you're doing with my daughter?" Marcus straightened his spine, meeting her gaze calmly. "She needed to use the restroom, Mom. She was trying to tell you." The woman's face flushed. "Charlotte doesn't need help from the staff. I can handle my own child." "Then maybe you should try listening to her," Marcus said quietly. The words came out before he could stop them, and he immediately regretted his tone. He needed this job. He couldn't afford to lose this job. But the look on Charlotte's face, the shame creeping across, her features as her mother spoke, about her like she wasn't standing right there, made something in him refuse to back down. The woman's eyes went cold. "I don't know who you think you are." Charlotte's hands moved between them, signing frantically. Her mother didn't even glance at her. "She's trying to tell you something," Marcus said, his voice steadier now. "I don't have time for this." The woman grabbed Charlotte's wrist. "Too tight," Marcus noticed, judging by the way the girl winced. "We're leaving." But Charlotte pulled back, her eyes finding Marcus's. She signed something quick, and Marcus's limited sign language skills caught just enough. "Thank you." "You see me?" 3 words, 4 simple gestures, but they carried the weight of a childhood spent being invisible in plain sight. As the woman dragged Charlotte toward the door, still arguing into her phone, the little girl turned back one more time. She pressed her hand to her heart, then extended it toward Marcus, the sign for gratitude, for connection, for being witnessed. Marcus returned the gesture, his throat tight. They were gone in seconds, swallowed by the Manhattan street crowd. But Marcus stood rooted to the spot, his hands still raised in that final sign. Around him, the café continued its chaotic rhythm. No one else had noticed the exchange. No one else had seen a lonely child finally being heard, except someone had noticed. That was beautiful. An elderly man in an expensive overcoat stood near the counter, his coffee cup forgotten in his hand. He had silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything. "How long have you known sign language?" Marcus shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. 3 years, give or take. "My son's school." He stopped, unsure why he was explaining himself to a stranger. The man nodded slowly. "That little girl's name is Charlotte Ashford. Her mother is Diane Ashford, CEO of Ashford Technologies. Worth about $3 billion last I checked." He paused, letting that number hang in the air. "I'm Richard Ashford, Charlotte's grandfather." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "I didn't mean to overstep, sir. Richard held up a hand. "Don't apologize for being the only person in this room who treated my granddaughter like a human being." His voice cracked slightly on the last words. "My daughter, Charlotte's mother, she's been struggling. She sees Charlotte's deafness as a problem to be solved, rather than simply part of who she is. I've tried to talk to her, tried to make her understand that Charlotte doesn't need fixing. She needs love. She needs to be seen." The old man's eyes grew distant. "Charlotte lost her father 2 years ago. Car accident. My daughter threw herself into work and Charlotte got left behind. I've been searching for ways to reach my daughter, to make her understand what she's losing. But she won't listen to me. She won't listen to anyone." He set his coffee cup down and pulled out a business card. "I own several businesses in the city. One of them is a community center in Brooklyn that provides resources for deaf children and their families. We need someone to help coordinate programs, lead sign language classes, work directly with families. Richard extended the card toward Marcus. The pay is triple what you're making here. Full benefits. Flexible hours so you can be there for your son. Marcus stared at the card, not daring to touch it. Why me? You don't know anything about me. I know enough, Richard said simply. I know you saw my granddaughter when everyone else looked through her. I know you spoke her language when her own mother wouldn't. I know you risked your job to help a child you'd never met. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. He pressed the card into Marcus's hand. Think about it. Call me when you're ready. But Marcus? The old man's eyes held a depth of grief that made Marcus's chest ache. Don't wait too long. Charlotte needs more people like you in her life. And frankly, so does this world. That night, after Jaden had fallen asleep clutching his favorite dinosaur, Marcus sat at their tiny kitchen table and stared at the business card. The numbers on his phone calculator told him this job could change. Everything. No more double shifts. No more choosing between groceries and Jaden's school supplies. No more terror of what would happen if the car broke down. But it was more than money. It was purpose. It was using the gift Sarah had given him, the ability to see people. Really see them, to make a difference. He thought about Charlotte's face when he'd signed to her. That moment of pure connection, of being understood after so long in silence. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Richard Ashford. Charlotte hasn't stopped signing about the kind man at the cafe. You gave her something precious today. Hope that someone in this world speaks her language. Whatever you decide about the job, thank you for that gift. Marcus looked at the photo on his wall. Sarah, radiant and alive, holding newborn Jaden. She'd always said the smallest acts of kindness could change someone's entire world. He'd never fully understood that until today, until he saw Charlotte's eyes light up when someone finally listened. He picked up his phone and typed, "When can I start?" 3 months later, Marcus stood in the Brooklyn Community Center, watching Charlotte teach a room full of children the sign for friend. Her grandfather had convinced Diane to let Charlotte attend the programs, though the mother still kept her distance, still buried herself in work. But Charlotte was blooming. Every week she grew more confident, more joyful. And every week, Marcus saw more parents learning to communicate with their deaf children, more families finding connection they'd thought was lost. Jaden sat in the corner, practicing signs with Charlotte during breaks. The two had become inseparable, teaching each other their respective languages, English and ASL, building a friendship that transcended sound. Sometimes Diane would appear at pickup, still glued to her phone. But occasionally, just occasionally, Marcus would catch her watching. Charlotte sign with the other children, something unreadable flickering across her face. Grief, maybe, or regret, or the first stirrings of understanding. Richard told him to be patient. You can't force someone to see, he'd said. You can only keep showing them what they're missing, and hope they eventually open their eyes. So Marcus kept showing up, kept signing, kept seeing the invisible children and teaching others to see them too. Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply acknowledge another person's humanity. Sometimes the greatest gift you can offer is the willingness to learn someone else's language, to meet them where they are, to say without words, I see you, you matter, you are not invisible. And in a world that so often looks away, that simple act of witness can change everything.